Welcome to Tioga Patriots podcast. I am your host, Rocco Lucente, and I would like to welcome you to the inaugural episode of our new YouTube channel. The purpose of this channel is twofold. The first is to provide patriots in Tioga County with a source of news commentary which will inform them more reliably about the events of the current day and how they impact our area. And the second is to begin to create a roadmap of how we achieve liberty here in Tioga County, how we push back against the state and federal governments, which are so constantly shoving the boot down our throat, and how we make our own local government as conservative as we possibly can. Well, today's episode is about the second part of that, the roadmap to attaining liberty here in Tioga County. And, we can only really do the things that we can do in the moment. And the next big moment that's coming up is in 11 days from the recording of this podcast, which is on Friday, June 17th, we have the Republican primaries in the state of New York. And we will be having both local and state level primaries here in Tioga County, all three of them Republican primaries, and all three of them will play a role in shaping the future of our county. So I want to start this off by being very clear that these opinions are not the official opinions of our group. Tioga Patriots is a fairly diverse group of people of all sorts of backgrounds. In fact, most of the people within the group are, ladies with families and children, whereas I'm a single guy. So really, demographically, we're sort of different. But what we have in common is a zeal for liberty and a real zeal for trying to get our communities back to the values that the people around here actually believe in. And that's really what I'm going to be trying to do with this video, is tell you what my thoughts are on each of the candidates, who I personally am going to be voting for, who I personally endorse, and why that is. And, at that point, you can take that with the other information that you might get from other sources, that you might see from around town, around the campaign trail, from maybe even the candidates themselves. And I think that all of those things should be taken in conjunction with each other in order to make an informed decision. But the reason why I am going to tell you what I'm thinking and why I'm going to make this video and give out some personal endorsements is because there are a lot of people who are in our group who respect my political acumen, who think that I have a pretty good idea of the outlay of the land, so to speak, when it comes to politics in Tioga County. And I think that, they're probably right about that. There are some things that, I probably could become a bit more educated on. But I think that as far as the average citizen in our county goes, I probably know more than most. So with that being said, don't want to prolong the video any longer than necessary. Let's get right down to the endorsements. For Tioga County Justice, we have two candidates running. One of them is Adam Schumacher, and Adam is a lifelong Tioga County resident, a lifelong Republican Party member, and somebody who has been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney in private practice. Adam attended our Tioga Patriots Memorial Day event, and in general, he's been pretty supportive and pretty vocally supportive, I should say, of our group. So that's been a very good experience that I've had getting to know Adam over the last couple of months. Mary Townsend is his opponent, and Mary is the current Town of Candor Justice and is also a public defender in Tioga County Family Court. Prior to working in these roles, Mary served in the Tompkins County Family Court system, and her husband is the former Deputy Chief of the Ithaca Police Department. So, she certainly has a lot of legal and law enforcement background as well. Now, on these issues themselves, my conclusion about this race is, on the issues themselves, both of these candidates have said virtually the exact same things when I have seen them speak or when I have asked them questions. They've both professed to be conservative Republicans, but when pressed on specifics of the issues, both have essentially defaulted back to the fact that they have to follow the law as judges and therefore have little leeway on most issues. And, that makes sense. That is the truth. Judges have to follow the law. Their job is not to legislate from the bench. Their job is to faithfully interpret the law as they read it. So, to me, this is by far the least clear race of the three, but it's also one where the metrics upon which I am judging the race and judging each candidate make pretty clear who to endorse. The race really comes down to who you actually trust to live up to the values which they profess to hold. In that regard, there are two things about Mary Townsend which concern me. The first is that Adam Schumacher has been saying repeatedly that he is the only lifelong Republican in the race, and Mary has not denied that this is true, despite that this has been a primary statement of advocacy for his candidacy that her opponent has made. One of his primary campaign pitches, so to speak, has been that he's the only lifelong Republican in the race, and Mary has not once denied that this is true. I have to believe that this means that Mary was once a registered Democrat. Mary also worked in Tompkins County and came from Tompkins County, which is frankly, when you combine that with her change in party registration, that gives me some reason to be skeptical. We have a real problem here in Tioga County of public officials registering Republican just so that they can get low information voters to vote for them uncritically. And while I don't have any direct evidence that that's happening in this case, I do have some concerns that that's happening in this case based on these background-related concerns. Now, I will not go so far as to claim that this is what's happening. I don't want to say that I believe Mary Townsend is insincere in her convictions. I don't believe that. I have no idea whether or not that is true. But when this is the only functional difference that I can really find to distinguish these two candidates, it automatically becomes a deciding factor in my vote. At the end of the day, Adam Schumacher has longer roots in Tioga County, has longer roots in the Republican Party, and I think, therefore, we can be more confident that he will uphold the values of the people of our county from the bench than would his opponent. And that's not to say that he definitely will or that Mary definitely won't. I think that with the sort of vagary of the campaign pitches on both sides, when it comes to the specifics of issues, we're sort of in a situation where it's a toss-up either way. But I think that when you're in a situation like that, you have to look at the pros and cons, and in this case, I think that it weighs pretty clearly in favor of Adam. So with that being said, the next race that we have on tap is the Owego Town Councilman race. And the first candidate I'll talk about in that race is Charles Beeman. We call him Chuck, people who know him, but I'll call him Charles in this video just because that's how he's appearing on the ballot. So I want people to associate my comments with that candidate. So Charles Beeman is running to oppose mandates such as the new law against gas hookups that New York State is trying to implement, and really the entirety of the New York State green energy agenda, which is threatening to strip all of us of our most basic property rights. Charles is a member of Tioga Patriots, and he was actually instrumental in getting the Memorial Day picnic done. And from what I can tell, having talked to him, he really does believe in all the values that brought this group of people together. So, in my view, getting people like Charles Beeman elected to office is the key to getting Tioga County turned around. It's one of the most important things that we can do, is electing sincere patriots like Charles Beeman to office. Now, his opponent is Gary Helmers, and I have looked at some of Gary's campaign messaging, and he is marketing himself as a candidate without a political agenda, and I can only assume that that means that he doesn't really have a set of strong views which he is going to the office with the idea of advocating. So if you have a political agenda, meaning that you have a set of strong views that you believe that the town board should embody, then it doesn't seem like Gary Helmers is your candidate. And he, in fact, has implied that the stands that Charles has taken on these issues are not motivated by a sincere conviction to make the community better, but are instead motivated by a desire to have his name in the paper. And this strongly implies that Gary plans to take none of the stands which Charles seeks to take as a member of the Owego Town Council. Frankly, it suggests a technocratic approach to government, where the town board is simply the local arm of Kathy Hochul's tyrannical New York State government, and functionally, it's a stance which means that you have no voice whatsoever in how your community is run. So in my view, this race is the ultimate test of grassroots versus establishment politics. The entire Tioga County Republican establishment has lined up behind Gary, including everyone who has conspired to deprive the people of this community of a real voice in how their communities are run. If you want someone to actually push back against that and represent you, Charles Beament is your candidate. If you think that the role of the town board is to not rock the boat and is to dutifully carry out the priorities of Kathy Hochul and the communists in Albany, then you should vote for Gary. I don't know how anyone could hold the latter view and call themselves a Republican. I strongly encourage you to vote for Charles Beament for Owego Town Council for this reason. I think this is the most important race we have, and if you are a Tioga Patriot in Owego, it is extraordinarily important that you get out to vote and send a message to the local political establishment that we are tired of the go-along to get along politicians. Finally, you have the governor race, and I'll just go through the candidates as briefly as I can. You have first the guy who many consider to be the front runner, Lee Zeldin, and he is the Republican Party endorsed candidate. And Zeldin holds the correct views on many issues, though there are some where some conservatives do have concerns. Zeldin has been pretty emphatic that nothing about the New York abortion laws would change if he were made governor, and he seemed more open to reforms on domestic terrorism which could negatively impact our civil liberties than did Andrew Giuliani during the first Republican debate on June 14th. That being said, I want to be clear on the big issues like COVID mandates and bail reform and the Green Agenda's attempt to destroy counties like Tioga County. Lee Zeldin is rock solid. So on all the big issues, he really is good, and he really has done a good job on those issues, despite the concerns that some conservatives have on some other big issues such as abortion. Then you have Andrew Giuliani. Now, Andrew Giuliani is the most conservative candidate in the field, and he was the only one who gave answers at the New York Republican debate on June 14th, which aligned completely with everything that our group believes in. He was the only candidate who refused to show a vaccine card in order to enter the building. The other three candidates all showed their papers in order to participate in a Republican debate, and Giuliani was thus relegated to remote participation in the debate. And his no-compromise position on vaccine apartheid was indicative of how he would answer the questions. He gave no-compromise answers on guns, on abortion, on censorship, and on mandates. And Andrew has really positioned himself as the MAGA Trump-style candidate in this race. Next up, you have Rob Astorino, and he is the only conservative candidate from upstate New York. And he would be looking to build upon the success that he had in a 2014 campaign where he really dominated upstate New York and came close to beating Andrew Cuomo than any other candidate has since Cuomo had become governor. Now, Astorino has made COVID mandates a major focus of his campaign, and he has positioned himself as a conservative fighter. He's pitching himself as a conservative in the mold of Ron DeSantis. So a little bit less bombastic than a Trump, but he would certainly argue just as conservative as somebody like Trump. And then finally, you have Harry Wilson. And to be blunt with you, Harry Wilson is the only candidate on this list who I will not consider for my own vote, or who I wouldn't have considered for my own vote prior to endorsing. And that is because Harry Wilson is a pro-abortion, anti-Trump, liberal Republican who worked for Barack Obama, who fired his unvaccinated employees, and who embodies everything about Republicans that has made people like us so frustrated for so long. And in my view, there is nothing redeeming about Harry Wilson's candidacy. It is a complete con job. He is the only candidate of the four who is truly unworthy of consideration for your vote. So, in conclusion, there is some room for legitimate disagreement among conservatives in this race, in my view, because three of the four candidates are good, but none of them are truly great. The only one who comes close, the one who comes closest to being truly great in my view is Andrew Giuliani, and that's who I'm going to be voting for, and that's who I endorse in this race is Andrew Giuliani, because Andrew was the only one who gave 100% no compromise answers to the debate questions, and he has staked out positions on guns and abortion which are to the right of the rest of the primary field, which is frankly quite impressive given that he's the only candidate in the field who is actually from New York City. Andrew also has very astute positions on issues like crime, environmental policy, and cryptocurrency, which would immediately turn New York around if implemented. I will be voting for Andrew Giuliani on June 28th. I give Andrew Giuliani my full-throated endorsement, and I encourage all of you to vote for him as well. Let's show how much influence our group has by getting Andrew Giuliani, Charles Beeman, and Adam Schumacher primary wins on June 28th. Thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.